It should come as no surprise that the Archons are going to be rerunning starting in version 5.0. Venti, Zhongli, Raiden, Nita, and Finina, each one of them having their own strengths and weaknesses. And today, I'll be going over each and every single one of them to help you decide which one is right for you. If you're a new player who's just now getting into Genshin Impact, or if you're a veteran who wants to add another Archon to your roster, then this will give you a good foundation for what each and every Archon does. I'll be making a video on the Pyro Archon shortly down the line, but for now, I hope you won your 50/50s and let's get into it. Starting off with Zhongli, the Geo Archon. He's most notable for his amazing shield. For as long as I've had him on my account, whichever team he's been on, I have never had to worry about dying or taking damage. Zhongli's shield is not only incredible, but it supports a high HP scaling, has over 100% uptime, and provides a resistance shred. While his ult provides a nice bit of CC if you choose to use it, as it can be a DPS loss. But having enemies frozen for a period of time is really nice. Zhongli is incredibly comfy for almost any team that doesn't require a healer, which is most, and the fact that if you want to use him as a shield bot, you just build all HP, which makes him incredibly low investment. Now the major issue that I see being brought up with Zhongli is that he's a complete DPS loss for your team. Why use him when you can fill that slot with a buffer or another off-field unit? And to that, I've always said you can't do damage when you're dead. You can't do damage if your attacks are constantly being interrupted. Being interrupted has been a major hindrance of many of their recent characters without their constellations, unfortunately. Nouvelette, Arlecchino, Clorand are three recent examples where without their cons, if they get interrupted, well, that's a big DPS loss right there. Zhongli is a staple defensive unit for any account, whether you're a new player or a veteran. And while you certainly can get by without him, there's simply no one else that provides incredible shooting like Zhongli with the amazing uptime. Pair that with the tenacity of the Megalith set, and he's providing a nice buff to your teammates. However, he can act as a sub DPS where you can build him for more damage. While it's not anything too crazy, you can still cook up some decent teams with other Geo units with him that will still perform fine. As for Constellation, C2 is a nice quality of life for co-op. Outside of that though, they're not necessary at all, and you're better off saving your primal gems. But if you're looking for a unit that will keep you alive basically through anything, then the Geo Archon will deliver. Now, the next Archon that I want to talk about is Venti, the Animal Archon. While Venti is far from his golden prime, he still has his uses. Venti provides incredible CC when fighting smaller enemies, especially when they're in larger groups. He helps out during exploration with his skill if you need a boost in trying to climb something, provides energy for your entire team, and while his damage isn't anything too crazy, if the enemy stays in his ult for the entire duration, it's a nice chunk of damage. Unlike the other Archons who have either kept their value or have gotten even stronger as time has gone on, Venti hasn't aged well within Genshin Impact, but I still think he excels in the hands of a newer player. For someone who's just getting started in Genshin Impact and doesn't have many characters, Venti can really help you in your overworld exploration early on, and help you clear out enemies in the overworld fairly easily. But besides those few things, Venti isn't all that valuable anymore, and even then there are still better characters out there for newer players, especially when kits are becoming more and more complicated, and other supports being able to do everything in the game plus more. He's really a pickup only if you like his design, and it's not to say that he's a bad unit, it's just the game has drifted away from its playstyle, and Genshin has been making characters that just overshadow Venti. You primarily use Venti for his ult, which makes a wind vortex, and with it being animal, you can swirl another element to do more damage, with the exception of being Geo and Dendro. This vortex is his bread and butter as it groups enemies together, and it does a decent amount of damage. His skill is helpful with exploration, giving you a wind current, while in combat if you just tap it, you regain a nice bit of energy, but there's not much use for it outside of that. He's pretty much used for floor 11 chamber 1 of the abyss, in which there's a bunch of smaller enemies that have to be grouped together in a defensive objective. That's where Venti usually shines in the end game. Outside of that, I rarely bring my Venti out unless I need to collect something that's high up in the air. Overall, when the situation calls for Venti, he'll shine in that scenario. Outside of that, however, there are characters that can do a lot more than he can. Like I said, he's not a bad unit. He may not be the best choice for a team, but he's still a solid pickup for the early game. Just know that as you progress through the game, his value may depreciate. As for the Raiden Shogun, the Electro Archon, the Electro Mommy. I'm sorry, Claren took that spot. She's an incredible unit, being able to slot into many different roles. You can use her as either an on-field DPS, off-field DPS, she can be a driver of reactions, she has great electro application, and she can battery your entire team. The Raiden Shogun over the years has only gotten stronger and more flexible, especially with the release of Dendro. While I have used her as an on-field DPS, once Dendro came out, I slapped her on my Hyper Bloom team where she absolutely crushes content pretty easily. As of now, she's our only actual Archon DPS. And while she isn't the pinnacle of DPS, Raiden, as long as you build a team around her, she will get the job done. But her kit has so many great features that players can take advantage of. First off, her skill lets you do coordinated attacks whenever someone uses their basic attack. Not only does this last for an extended period of time, but it applies for your other active characters, which is really helpful in trying to drive reactions with Catalyst units. Her coordinated attacks synergize with so many other great off-field units as well. Raiden also acts as a battery for your entire team, so not only will she help your team have their ults faster, but she has the ability to buff their damage as well. While her burst gives her a huge chunk of front-loaded damage and allows you to continuously do electro slashes that look absolutely cool. Yes, if you put her on her hyper carry team, she wants Bennett, which leads to circle impact. But supports like Kujo-Sara, Kazuha, Shangling, Yelan, Zencho, and many others are great supports. The Raiden Shogun has a lot of free-to-play options as well in terms of weapons, and her artifact domain, being the emblem of Sever of Fate, is shared by many characters. So any pieces that roll less than favorably can probably go to your supports. However, as I said, Hyperloom is pretty disgusting. My team is Raiden, Nita, Finina, and Jean, and they absolutely decimate everything. And yes, I have been using that team even before Finina came out, and it's still cracked. Like I said, you can run Raiden with high ER, attack, and crit, or if you have Nita, run Raiden with full EM and just watch everything die. However, building Raiden can be tricky unless you are going that full EM route. Raiden wants a mix of high ER, crit, and attack, which can be a little overwhelming for new players as you want to hit around 200% ER for the extra damage while needing a suitable amount of attack and crit. So she can take a bit of investment to get up and going, not to mention building up her proper supports. She's definitely not a unit where you pull and can just slap HP and crit on. But full EM with proper Dendro supports works wonders. Raiden can also have some pretty decent early constellations, C1 giving you a bit more damage, and C2 providing you with defense ignore, which is a nice jump in damage, I will say. And C3 is the upgrade to her ult, increasing it by 3 levels, which is very nice to have instead of that being like the C5, so that's a nice damage increase as well. Over time though, I still really appreciate Raiden. She's incredibly strong and has so many uses. Not to mention, I really enjoy her animations, and I feel like while she's not the big 3 of DPS, her damage is really good. Nevertheless, Raiden since her release has always been a great choice if you're looking for a carry, a sub DPS, or just a strong battery that can do damage. So if you're looking to pick up a Raiden, now is a great time to as we enter the land of Pyro. Now, we have the Archon of Dendro Nita, the 4-2 GOAT of Genshin Impact. Yeah, she's an absolutely insane unit. Best in slot for pretty much every team in regards to proccing Dendro reactions, giving your team insane buffs for Dendro reactions, energy recharge, and does some pretty decent damage as well, all while applying a ton of Dendro both on field and off field. She has fantastic free to play weapons, that being the Magic Guide, and is fantastic for any Dendro related team. Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Quicken, Burgeon, Spread, and I highly doubt that going into Natlan, Nita and Dendro as a whole will become irrelevant. If anything, Pyro and Dendro reactions may become even stronger, and I feel as if Nita will still have a clear spot in the meta. For example, look at Embly, a new Dendro off-field unit that is focused on burning. And I'm sure that Nita will still be a core unit of whatever team Embly has. Nita still remains one of the strongest supports in the game. Her skill lets you mark enemies by either tapping or holding it, dealing Dendro damage and linking the enemies together. So whenever you cause a Dendro reaction, they will take a tick of damage. If you tap it, it will only hit the targets in front of you. But if you hold it, you'll go into aiming mode and it will have a much larger range. This is where Nita excels in, as she'll provide great off-field damage and Dendro application, while her ult is a domain expansion that will provide numerous buffs based on the elements on your team. While her domain is expanded, she'll also give your active character an EM buff, which includes Nita if she's on field. And by stacking EM on her, you'll be getting both damage percent and crit rate for your elemental skill, which is very nice. In my opinion, her domain is also incredibly efficient to farm, as many Dendro supports will also run either Gilded Dreams or the Deepwood Memories set. Additionally, with her skill, you can steal your friend's resources, do what you will with that information. Since day one of me getting in Nita, I have slapped a magic guide on her, gave her EM subsets with a bit of ER, and she's been killing it ever since. She's a very simple unit that does a lot for your team. As for Nita's constellation, her second constellation is one of the strongest in the game, allowing your reactions to actually crit. This is incredibly powerful, and it opens up so many more teams for Nita, but it is not needed, and C0 Nita is already incredibly broken. But if you want to vertically invest in her, C2 is a fantastic stopping point. Overall, Nita is just a fantastic pickup for any player looking to tap into the power of Dendro, and she'll be able to carry you through your toughest battles and the hardest content within Genshin Impact. So if you're looking to pick up a Nita, I guarantee you that she will not disappoint you. And finally, we are getting to the Hydro Archon, Lady Finina. She is the greatest character in Genshin Impact, lore-wise, story-wise, gameplay-wise, talking-wise, walking-wise, and dressing-wise. I think the best way to explain Finina is, let's just say you're firing a water gun. YouTube, a water gun. Now slap a Finina on your team, and now you're shooting water balloons instead. Yes, water balloons. You're going to see a large difference in damage. Yes, it's still a water gun, but you're still going to be squirting out water balloons. She's such an insane buffer, as well as a great off-field DPS. She gives your team such an insane damage boost that she can kind of make anything work. And let's be honest, when she was introduced, and this still holds true as of patch 4.8, we are still in the Finina meta. Oh, your team isn't performing well? Slap a Finina on there with a decent healer, and voila, you just 36 start the Abyss. Yeah, she is crazy. Finina has two forms, Dark and Light, or Osha and Pneumonia, I don't know. But her Dark form or her Oshia line form is primarily used. In this form, she will summon 3 water minions that will do damage in intervals and will stay on field even when Finina leaves. However, as they shoot, they will take HP from your entire team. And as long as your team is at 50% HP and up, their damage is increased. Now for her light form, basically her E will summon a water minion that will heal only your active party member. The healing is actually pretty decent, and I like to use it in the overworld as it doesn't cost energy and it's pretty good healing. It's nice to have, but it's not worth using in combat. Now for her ult, the absolutely insane damage buff. When she uses it, she'll grant your team fanfare points. Each fanfare point will provide your team with a damage bonus buff. At C0, this maxes out at a 75% buff with 300 fanfare stacks at talent level 10. Now you gain 1 fanfare stack whenever a party member's HP increases or decreases. So while you're in your ult and your water minions are hitting enemies, thus draining your HP, you're gaining stacks. Mind you, her minions drain HP from your entire team, meaning you're getting a lot of stacks from her skill alone. And this is where the caveat comes into play with Finina. She needs a healer, primarily someone that can heal the entire team, like Jean, Kokomi, Xinyan, Mika, Seedrine, any of those work. Single target healers can work, but she wants team-wide healing for maximum stacks. This might seem like a downside, but the insane damage buff that you will get honestly makes it worth it. Finina has been an S+ tier unit since her release, and her ability to slot into so many teams makes her one of the most used units in the game. While she doesn't apply a lot of Hydro, and even then, the bit that she applies is pretty slow, her damage and her insane buffing will skyrocket your team. Her domain is also incredibly efficient to farm, with most of Fontaine's cast using the Marche Hunter set and the Golden Troop set being a very popular set. As for builds, Finina really does want a lot of HP with a nice crit ratio so that her water minions can always crit. And do note that her burst does cost 60 energy, so running an ER sense is pretty viable. And with Finina, her burst lasts 18 seconds with a 15-second cooldown, giving it 100% uptime. Just be careful, as if you rebuff yourself while the current buff is active, you will reset your fanfare points back to 0. So just make sure that you let the buff run its course and then ult again. Finina really acts as a band-aid. Slot her and a healer on her team, and the difference in damage is so insane. While Finina is definitely not needed as we've gone years without her, she certainly brought the dust off of so many characters and acts as almost a crutch for many teams that haven't seen the light of day. Her constellations are also very nice. C1 increases the cap on the fair stacks, giving you an extra 100, thus making the damage bonus go from about 75% to 100%. And when you do ult, you automatically gain 150 stacks. C2 makes so that she gains her stacks 3 times as fast, and gives her additional HP based on the overflow of stacks. Really good first 2 constellations, but once again, they are not needed. C0 Finina is already insane. I'd really say that she's a must-pull unit in terms of meta, as she can really turn your account upside down, but you can pretty much make do with whatever in Genshin Impact and all of the Archons you don't necessarily need. They're just phenomenal at what they do, and it seems that with each new Archon release, the power ceiling just keeps on rising. I'm very excited to see how the Archon of Pyro and Cryo turn out. With that being said though, I really hope this video helped. I'm incredibly excited to start gearing up for Natlan. I hope you all win your 50/50s, and I'll see you in the next one.